Hello, and welcome to another episode of PPC Town Hall. My name is Fred Valles, and I'm your host. I'm also the co-founder of Optmyzr. And this is our second to last episode of 2020, and 2020 is the year when we started doing these town halls. So we wanted to make it one of the best ones yet, and hopefully actually the best one yet. So to do that, we brought in some of our favorite speakers, and we're going to talk about automation. You know, we all love the topic of automation, but really we wanted to frame the conversation today in terms of, let's take some of the smartest people in PPC and let's just hear how they're dealing with all the automation that's coming from Google, whether it's smart shopping, smart bidding, seasonality bid adjustments. Let's see what they're doing, what's working, what's not working, and let's get really tactical here. So we have three great guests, and let's get rolling with another episode of PPC Town Hall. All right, and we're back here with our guests, and many of these guests that we have are reading a good book that's out there right now, Joe. But they're also on the top 25 PPC expert lists that comes out every year. So we got Kirk Williams, Joe Martinez, and Aaron Levy. Guys, welcome to the show again.
Thanks for having us.
All right, where's everybody calling in from? Kirk, let's start with you. What's new in Billings?
Yeah, definitely. I'm calling in from my basement in Billings, Montana. And it is cold here. Bundled up the kids as we send them off to school because they do go in and out of school with quarantines and such. So we're doing that, figuring that out, and doing PPC as well.
Very nice. Does anyone have their bingo cards ready for when one of Kirk's children walks in on the show?
Believe it or not, there's only one here, and the gate is locked upstairs. So we have a gate he can't get down. So
the odds are heavily reduced.
Oh, yeah.
Joe, what basement are you in?
I am also in my basement. You are very true. I'm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Nice. Thanks for joining us.
Yes.
And Joe, of course, at Clix Marketing, but also has a very popular YouTube channel. So let's show that real quick. So Joe is part of Paid Media Pros, puts out videos. How many times a week, Joe?
Twice
a week. And they're usually pretty funny, right? So you try to have fun with it. So definitely check it out. And also really good advice. What's the last one you did there?
Last one I did was about Reddit pixel retargeting, which was kind of released more universal just in October. So I just kind of go over, if you just want to do basic site-wide visit, remarketing on Reddit, that's fine. But they also go into the individual conversion events that you can create and do retargeting off of those or exclusions off of those as well.
Nice. We don't talk much about Reddit here. So who's on Reddit? What kind of ads are you running on there?
For when I've done it in the past, I don't have any currently right now, but it's been very high level branding type ads because the industries I were in, people didn't want to be marketed to, and that crowd can really go behind you, or they could. I've said it before, they could rip you apart pretty easily. So it could be, you really have to research your audience before really diving in. But we use it for really just brand building. No ask at all. Just, hey, we're fun. And people engage with that better.
All right. So check out that video if you want to learn how to get on Reddit. Aaron, it doesn't look like you're in the basement. You got some natural light in there.
I'm above ground. What's funny though is that this room only has one window and it's about like 6 inches wide and it's over there. So in the fall, I'm getting used to looking like Two-Face because this side of my face is really well lit and this side is pitch black.
And wait, you're calling from Philadelphia?
Yep. It's Kirk, like you. It's a little chilly here. I had to pull out the stuff from the sweater drawer, but our version of chilly is probably a little bit different than Billings' version or Milwaukee's version of chilly. So it's still golf season for me.
Hey, it's pretty damn cold here in California too.
What's cold? What's California cold?
Yeah,
68.
70. No, it's actually colder than that in the Bay Area.
It's like puffer jacket weather.
Yeah. So, hey, everyone, thanks for watching. So tell us where you're calling in from. We'd love to hear where you're at today. And then, let's jump into some of the topics while we see where folks are from. So Pedro's calling us, saying that these are, in fact, top guys. Okay, so great. Vote of confidence. Pedro also likes Kirk's book. Good. And so we'll have some more people chiming in here where they're coming from. But topics-wise, I think we should talk about Black Friday, right? So that's just behind us. We all just did Thanksgiving here in the United States. Store visits generally seem to have dropped off for retailers. Not exactly surprising given the circumstances of the year. But what did we see in online? What have you guys seen?
I mean, at least from our side, we saw. Can I jump ahead and talk about the whole Cyber weekend?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Black Friday was bigger than usual. Cyber Monday was slower than usual. It logically makes sense because Black Friday, everyone sort of has their need to go bargain hunting and door busting and camp outside in a parking lot for whatever reason. So in theory, it's kind of pent up demand that everyone just took that online. And I think, I won't speak for the group. Yes, I will. But you guys chime in too. Everyone saw Cyber Monday as kind of quiet because it's the same as it's always been. So it wasn't necessarily exciting. So in theory, the weekend when people weren't trying to ignore their families, pacing out shopping a little bit more. But Joe, Kirk, I'm curious what you guys
Yeah, and it's interesting because the last episode we did, we pulled in some research from Microsoft, and they had said that Black Friday would actually have slower growth than expected, and Cyber Monday was going to be the one that would pop.
Yep.
And then, so now in the reports, like some people are saying that didn't actually happen, but in other reports it did happen. But I think all in all, online has just grown, and whether it was on Friday or Monday or now in Cyber Week, I mean, it's basically this whole notion that there are no more one-day events. They all keep going on and on until people have hit their sales quotas, I suppose. We
saw. Sorry, Fred. Didn't mean to interrupt you. We saw the same thing pretty much as Aaron, although I've heard of others saying differently. But to me, it makes a lot of sense, right? Because a lot of people were running sales earlier than normal. They had a Black Friday week or even month-long sales. I think people honestly are bored. There's early sales. I think people were buying earlier this year. We were seeing that in clients as well. And so in some ways, what we kind of saw in our numbers was Black Friday was almost like the capstone, like big event. And then it started to come down from there. We saw a little bit of a dip on Cyber Monday, but really it seemed this year that it was kind of a big earlier sales season, really spiked in Black Friday. Everyone was excited. And then they were kind of done.
Yeah. And was it driven by people fearing stuff wouldn't get to their houses in time, or was it like discounts based?
That's a good point. That might be some of it. I don't know exactly all of the reasoning, right? But definitely there is a concern of mail delivery and all that. We have, I don't know what it's like everywhere else, but in Billings, and we're not that big, right? But we'll see like a UPS truck backed up to like a U-Haul truck on the road, and they're shoving packages in and using U-Hauls and stuff to deliver. So, they're doing a great job, but definitely people are probably a little concerned this year of what that's going to be like. And then, so shipping days, shipping delays and all that as well. And then we even saw, because of more of the earlier extended sales season, I feel like we saw more out of stock products, more sales that went quicker this year, products that went quicker and then headed out.
So a little bit of fear buying then, right? So people were like, well, the discount's pretty good and it might get bigger, but stuff might also run out.
Yeah. I think definitely fear-based for sure, because I know I bought stuff from Target. I know I didn't do small business. I'm sorry. But like Target on Black Friday sent out an email saying there's already delays in shipping. It's still going to get there by Christmas, but it's already delayed. There's 2 other things I wanted to get for my kids, and it said it'd be 8 weeks to ship, so I'm not going to get it. So, and that was just this past weekend. I know some of that was starting earlier. To copy what both Aaron and what Kirk was saying, it was Black Friday was definitely much bigger than Cyber Monday. But what Kirk was saying, we definitely saw it earlier. So for us, it was more of like Black Friday in general was lower than expected, but the entire month of November was higher than expected. So it's almost like Black November. Some stuff was reactionary to competitors starting early, and their reaction be like, oh shoot, now we got to do it too early. And it kind of kicked off like first, second week of November for a few of ours.
Right. And I think, we've all been to the stores, and I don't know what it's like where you are, but toilet paper is gone again. And I think it's like a trigger, and people are like, wait, if that's gone again, what else is going to be gone?
Yeah.
And so they're making those commitments earlier and then with the very generous return policies, like why wouldn't you just stock up early, right? And
we've been calling it kind of the locust effect, that it's like an interesting, so I'm like kind of anthropological, and like I like watching human behavior like this. And it's combined with the virality of social and stuff like that. The second stock starts to deplete on something, people are like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, I gotta go to the next one. Oh no, there's no toilet paper on the shelves, so I must buy all of it because it must be a problem. But it's been weird to watch, and it's certainly been hard to predict inventory spikes, especially if you work on like a marketplace or something. Target, for example, or Kohl's or whoever it may be, I don't envy their merch team or their marketing team, because I'm sure that they're like, okay, we're fine on toilet paper, where to go?
Yep. And then you have random distribution places that are shut down, maybe with COVID, things, virus sweeps through, they got to shut it down. My wife every year for Thanksgiving makes this specific like tapioca salad. It's like the thing, that she ate as a kid growing up. It's like strawberry and all that. And she could not find tapioca. It was nowhere in Billings. And they said it had something to do with that. Sometimes they'll see that where something happens with the distributor, or maybe for some reason people were stockpiling tapioca. I don't know, with their toilet paper. Go together. I don't know.
Everybody was celebrating separately, right? So they all had to buy the big buckets of tapioca.
Yeah. Her salad got out. The secret of her salad got out, and everyone's buying it up.
So I'd love to share some numbers here from the Tinuiti blog. So I'm going to put that full screen. Aaron, I don't know if you want to walk us through it, but some really good research there, right? On exactly what happened on Black Friday in terms of CPCs across different channels on different days.
Yeah, so the Andy decided to make all the charts the same color, so I have to see which one you're looking at. It's very small.
You're out.
Is that's the Google one, right? Yeah, okay. No, I mean, we did see a lot of that. I mean, shopping inventory and shopping spend went up across most of our clients, which, again, pretty logical. People aren't going to the stores to buy stuff, so in turn, advertisers aren't doing their big Black Friday push. So in turn, there's leftover money because they have to spend all their money on circulars and information like that. So it goes over to Google or Amazon. But the post that is really worth a read for those of you who don't know Andy Taylor, he's a wizard and is the smartest math person I know.
Yeah, I'm still trying to get him onto this show, so can you put in a good word for us?
I'll try to think of ways to bribe him. But no, I mean, this information reflects largely what we just discussed. I mean, again, it's a bit different from what a lot of the big big engines like Google and Microsoft were forecasting, but it also logically makes sense as you start thinking about it. Black Friday is usually a time where everyone, most people, aside from us who work in retail, are off work. So they're looking for something to do. They're not with their families. So in turn, they spend a lot more time shopping. And it was much less of a open the floodgates at 7 a.m. when everyone's emails go out. There was less of reminder emails since a lot of the sales were longer term, as Kirk and Joe mentioned. And everyone's shipping cutoffs are really early. So it seems like everyone tried to get all or most of their shopping done really fast. And mobile didn't spike up as much as it usually does because people were at their houses with their computers. It was less of, oh no, I'm in my mom's house and like I just broke her favorite things. I have to buy a new thing. It's been interesting to watch.
And so let's bring this home to the topic of automation, right? So this has been an unusual year with things stretched out, happening at different times. Like, are any of you guys using automation, automated bidding, and has it worked well in context of this year?
Yeah, I mean, what I'll say, and we tend to work with larger data sets. Tinuiti tends to focus on larger enterprise clients. So smart bidding in general tended to work pretty well for us. This is one of those scenarios where it's a little bit, one of the things that I always pick on smart bidding for is that it has too short of a memory. This holiday season has been one of those scenarios where that's really valuable. Because it didn't try to base itself off of what happened last year. Right. So in turn, at least for us, it kept up pretty well and responded pretty well.
And did you do any tricks in terms of like using seasonality bid adjustments or other things scheduling wise?
We did. We use seasonality adjustments pretty religiously for most of our larger clients. So say we would start seeing some velocity, or we have seen in the past couple of weeks that noon was really popular, we'd start tweaking our seasonality adjustments up or down to say expected conversion rate is higher now. And it moved pretty quick. It tended to react and did what we wanted it to do.
Kirk, what did you see?
We saw the same thing. I regret to inform you that smart bidding did really well for us. So we tried both seasonality adjustments and not seasonal adjustments.
Yeah.
We tried it some counts. Smart bidding worked well with our seasonality adjustments.
Smart bidding inside smart shopping campaigns or smart bidding on text ads? I would say across the board, at least from what we were seeing. We saw smart shopping do really well in handling the Black Friday, the craziness. We had smart bidding on our text campaigns doing real well. Honestly, overall, I'm you're one of the
impressed.
more advanced guys, right? So I'm assuming you're not just like flipping the switch on smart bidding and have like one smart shopping campaign. Like it worked for you, but what was the trick here?
Yeah, we try to have a little bit of a combination of both, standard and smart, as well as some of that is just kind of constantly testing them, seeing what's working, what's not. But then some of that is I'm still trying to really figure out an awesome strategy of trying to think through both, because with standard, you get more of that control of saying, here are the specific search terms we're focused on, which sometimes, even if they're not always directly converting, is still valuable, especially for brands. As just one example, it might be a brand who really wants to position themselves in a certain area with what people are talking about or seeking out, where they don't have a history of sales, or maybe even people aren't quite ready to buy yet, but the brand wants to position there, right?
Right.
That's going to work.
Not like the last click attribution and the final keyword right before the sale, but sort of like building the funnel and being aggressively going after a new market segment.
Mm-hmm. And so that might be an instance where standard is a better fit, because we're really able to target those specific terms, especially with like a search term strategy where you're utilizing different priority structures and all that. But smart.
Sorry, I love asking questions, so I'm sorry to interrupt. But in terms of smart shopping, right? So Google figures out the keywords and the targeting. Do you ever like mess around with the feed and duplicate products, or have other tricks up your sleeve to kind of like get stuff in the upper funnel queries that might not be quite as specific to that one product?
With smart shopping, or just
no, with
either
shopping.
One? Yeah.
Well, and I guess it kind of applies to both, right? Because they both use the Google Merchant feed as their base.
Mm-hmm. We do. It's funny because about a year or two ago, we were even chatting with like a Googler who was telling us, yeah, Dupe, basically he told us straight up, hey, Dupe the products, put Black Friday in the front of the title, right? It's a new product, change the ID, all that. And we had a few months back, we had a product or a client where we had some dupe things going on. This was actually an accidental thing, long story that we will save for another time, that their team had done, clicked a button on Shopify, all of a sudden they have dupe products, right? They were actually disapproved. So, and by the way, I've been seeing Google Merchant Center filters far more aggressive than in the past. So I actually think that Google's really kind of starting to watch all that stuff a little bit more.
Yeah.
But definitely, to answer your question in the sense of definitely trying to figure out ways with the feed, and like you said, and that's one of those things where we're really trying to think through creatively. Okay, so smart shopping, it's not just search, it's on display, it's on YouTube, it's on all that. Hey, rather than be frustrated that we can't just control the search terms, like really, how can we use that to our benefit to get in front of all those people that for some reason Google wants to buy from us? Cool. And one of the things that I don't hear a lot of people talking about that I think there's opportunity with smart shopping more is figuring out ways in your campaigns, and I would love for Google to change this, but you have one ad basically per campaign that you can set up really with smart shopping. So I'd love them to have some sort of either different ads or different ad groups or whatever, but we're trying more and more to figure out, hey, how can we group products around that ad creative? Because it really is more of a creative aspect to shopping than has ever been before, even arguably Showcase. And so kind of experimenting with that as well. So really using the power of like, hey, Google's going to show this thing on YouTube ads and all that. It's going to have ads. It has the image. You can put a video in there, really kind of orchestrate it now around the ad creative, choosing your products wisely, things like that. We've seen that begin to work really well. So,
and sort of one of my thoughts around this is that, we used to have like this AdWords system, and we would optimize little pieces within that, whether they be bids or ads or targeting. But Google is automating within that sphere of what AdWords or Google Ads is. So to us, like, we're being pushed to the periphery of that system. But it's interesting, and that's where the whole new best practices come in, because now you can sort of manage things, but at the periphery of the ad system, but that still feeds into the ad system and modifies what the ads look like. So I think that's a little bit what you're talking about, right? Is use that feed to figure out how you actually manipulate the ads, even though technically you might think, well, we don't get to control the ads from shopping or smart shopping. Right. So that's one concept that I'm thinking more and more about. Like, and I think the other point that you made, which is really interesting, is, you could be happy with the results that you're getting from the smart shopping campaign, right? But if you're watching this and if you're, one of us, you're not happy with average results. Like, we get paid to deliver more than average, right? So it's like, what are those new best practices? And Joe, I'd love to hear from you, like, anything in your world that's like dramatically shifted and where you've seen a brand new opportunity that a lot of people might not realize yet.
No, we just, in terms of how it shifted, I know I mentioned when our kind of Black Friday started earlier than possible, our seasonality bidding kind of was thrown out the window of what we expected to do. I'm unlike Aaron. Aaron looks with more enterprise, larger data sets. Mine are mostly smaller clients, very niche products, sometimes higher ticket item type products. So we understand that those really aren't necessarily the impulse buys. So we're looking at more of the time of day, understanding that it's going to take multiple touch points for a user to buy this product. And we hit them enough with discovery on social and Google and everything initially, but then we're seeing that they later go back on their phones at night. And, if they're higher ticket items, sometimes when the parents have to wait to do their things after the kids go to bed, it was the late night hours that we're seeing the better performance. So it's just readjusting the different schedules, because last year's schedule doesn't apply to us this year. And then just updating how we wanted to boost our bidding and performance on that aspect. Sorry, I hit my mic there.
Joe, you just triggered a question for me. Fred, I'm taking your job. I'm going to ask a question.
I mean, there's 4 people call, like, well, I'm off. You guys handle it.
This is like when they say manage up. I'm interviewing up. What about demographics? Did you guys see any change in demographics in the seed that is for pulling this in? Honestly, I haven't looked at our accounts yet. But the concept of digital newbies, there's a lot of people that historically were store only, or obviously skews older. Some seniors who normally would go to the store are now trying to figure out this internet computer machine thing. Did you see any changes in your ad demographics and performance, conversion rate, things like that?
Yeah. The one I just mentioned, like, their goal, I mean, it's an item that their goal is ideally would be like top 10, top 5%. It's a high ticket price item that people would want in their house. That was usually like a go-to demographic that we would see. And then the unknown category just skyrocketed, like, within this past 6 months. It's not really affecting anything, more in terms of, like, is it something that we really try to push more? Do we update any bids towards on this one because it's still converting not as well as the top 10%, but they got to be in there somewhere. There still have to be more in there. It's that type of calculation that we're trying to work through as well. Gender demographic, no difference at all. Age range, a little bit on the older one, but also I think just in general, we saw a boost from like the 18 to 24 age range, and that's definitely not who they want, because most of them don't have the money to buy some of these products. But it's some of those that we've seen. It's just the household income one that was the biggest change than what we've seen, and that was 6 months. That wasn't just like recently because of holiday stuff. And
I want to show something that's interesting on that topic. So this is the Search Engine Land article, and I've highlighted that sentence. But as far as like digital newbies, so how do you convert them, right? So they're not that used to shopping online. So it looks here like retailers that were offering curbside pickup had a strong increase in conversion rate. So that seems to be like one of the things bridging that divide and getting the digital newbies who are used to going to the store maybe to like do a bit of a hybrid approach.
Well, it's interesting, something that we've seen, Joe, much like you, over the last 6 or so months. This is going to sound rudimentary, but a return to basics. To be blunt, I've somewhat abandoned calls to action over time. Like if you're showing people a picture of a product, they know that you want them to buy it. But returning back to some of that stuff and almost giving turn-by-turn directions to these people that aren't digitally native seems like it works. Like, okay, you click here, you enter this, this is what's going to happen, you buy it, this is when it's going to come to you, or you can come get it if you want.
Do any of you guys, I personally don't, do any of you guys have any e-com clients that also have brick and mortar?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Have you looked at anything in terms of like store visits in correlation with that? Like, would they count like the store visit column? I'm literally asking because I don't have any sense of familiar with it. Has that factored in at all in terms of those metrics within Google?
I mean, I'd let you answer that too, right? But I would think that's kind of a weird metric at this point to look at, because in so many places, store capacity is limited to 10% because of what's going on.
But would it count in terms of curbside pickup? Is that close enough proximity to even trigger?
I'm gonna do the thing we all hate. It probably depends. It depends how precise of a location they could get. Like if it's in a mall, which realistically wouldn't be getting stuff anyway, no.
Yeah.
If it's in the back pickup area of a mall, maybe. If it's in a strip mall, probably would count. If it's a standalone store, it should track them all. But that's an interesting data set. I should look at that.
That's a good question.
You're welcome.
And then,
Someone answer that.
So now, assuming that you have that data, somebody please do answer. But assuming that you have the data, how would you use it? Would you actually factor it into quote unquote conversions, which then feeds into the automated bidding, or would you just sort of treat that as a separate thing that you just monitor for now?
It varies a lot depending on clients, because like all things, it also depends on cost and revenue centers. So maybe the digital team isn't incentivized to drive people to the store, so we want to discourage it, even though these are kind of contrary to what we might want to do as a business. That's how the world works sometimes. But those that are a little bit more holistic, what we might do is look in, and this feeds into a topic on just how we look at search as a whole now, but coach the bid tool to do what we want. So if we see that like this demographic, this set of terms, this set of ads, whatever, tends to convert better as an in-store pickup than it would be as a standard e-com thing. Okay, let's take that group, pivot it, tell smart bidding that we want more store visits for this. That group can go, and then we'll keep the other stuff towards the more conventional.
And okay, so that makes sense, right? So you want to prioritize the audience that you care about, whether it's store visitors or new customers who haven't shopped from you before, or whatever it is that you care about the most. So practically, how do you get that in place?
So I'm gonna jump ahead again. This is gonna kind of answer the how do we structure our campaigns right now in general? Like what's new? What have we abandoned? So the way that we look at it is essentially conversion runways. If you think about smart bidding on its most practical level, it largely looks at expected conversion rate. So the way that we think about it is, okay, what do we expect this group of, frankly, people to do? Talking about SCAGs and keywords. If intent is fundamentally different, we'll split them out. If not, we'll compress. We all know that Google and frankly every engine is pushing towards consolidation, and so are we. It's a little bit more of establishing runways for the automation to make the right decisions. And
those runways, like, sorry to interrupt, but like if you have these more granular structures, right? So you might break out one group if you think it's different. Like, is that then for the purpose of setting a different TROAS for that?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So we split this group out, and sometimes it's audience based, sometimes it's keyword based, sometimes it's interaction based, sometimes it's demographic or Google audience based.
Like in the back of your head, you're also doing a lifetime value calculation. Like, what's the probable?
Yeah, I mean, somewhat. You don't want to shrink data too much to the point that you're making bad assumptions. So it's one of those things where the way that we look at it is performance different? Is value to the business different? Does messaging need to be different? If the answer is no, then don't split them out, because smart bidding will work better with more inputs and more information. If any of those things do need to be different, that's where you start looking at new campaigns, new ad groups, new ad sets, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and with messaging being different, and I want to hear from Joe because I know you're a big messaging guy. But like one frustration that we sometimes face is like we have these responsive search ads that we put in all these components, and next thing you know, it's like literally every piece of like description that we've put in there, it's in the ad, and the ad just is complete nonsense, but it's got a gajillion calls to action, and it looks like junk, right?
Yeah.
When Google's doing these things.
Yeah, there's ones that we will utilize the pin option on them to make sure that certain elements of them show. It's something that we definitely consider as we're mapping it out. That's something that we will honestly show in front of clients too. We get up to this many headlines. These are the ones that they show. Would it make sense if this came before this? And would it be a good ad if these three even shown up? Okay, if so, if you really don't want that combination, which one of these can we remove? You know, does it really make sense to add all these variations if 4 of them pretty much say the same thing? Google's going to flag it. They're going to say you should add more keywords into your headline. So I don't want 6 headlines in there that are all just keyword focused. It looks like junk. But it's one of the things that we've honestly just played around with what makes sense. You know, and that's where we kind of focus on value prop. Maybe I'll pin a first one that's made more sense to the product type thing, and then just look at testing the other ones. We more and more slowly, I have liked RSAs. They didn't really work for me that well in the beginning, but more and more I see them working better. And when we've seen them, I know this probably isn't really applicable to most people, but on our a few accounts that we have that are grant accounts, which are limited anyway, the moment you add RSAs to a grant account, impressions and clicks go up. So if you're really trying to milk that free money with a grants accounts, RSA that one up completely.
And that's interesting because there's probably less focus on conversions in those accounts, so Google can sort of get you maybe the junkier traffic and still get a good enough quality score.
Yeah, and you're okay with it, absolutely.
Exactly, yep. Because all you care about is that brand exposure. But if you actually cared about conversions, then that gets into some other topics we could talk about here, but like broad match and like how willing are we to take just any query that comes in. And by the way, we don't know what the queries are anymore. So
yeah. Well, it's all just match now. It's all the same, right?
Basically, yeah. So it make our lives easier if they got rid of match types.
Yeah, can we agree the keywords are gone? Like they're there, but they're not.
That's what you said last time too, right? So
yeah, they're gone. Yeah. I just want more people to get on my keyword list boat with me.
Yeah, no, you were the one. You were the first one to say it. So I'm kind of on board.
And that's where, I mean, we're looking more and more into automation with stuff like that. I think you had shared previously, Fred, the Search Engine Land article by Ginny Marvin about broad match. I'd commented on that. You know, so we're just really trying to think through this whole idea of Google leaning hard into automation. Those of us who've been running things for a while, you know, it can be frustrating. Sometimes it's just the fact that it's changed. I mean, I fully admit to there being a frustrating level of learning something for a decade and then having that change. So I know as much as an intern on this one specific thing, right? There's a frustration to that. The flip side of that is, unfortunately, there's an evolution of that needs to happen too. And with automation, you know, we're trying to really think, how do we in some ways reinvent the way we think about structure and these sort of things? And so on that broad match idea, we've started testing things like, okay, Google, like let's give this a try. You get target ROAS bidding, you get a few very tightly controlled broad match keywords where everything else is excluded. So we are making sure that if we're targeting things that are in their thing, and we're treating this less as a specific, we know what we want to get from this campaign, and a little bit more of a, here you go, Google, I want to reach upper funnel type stuff that I never would have thought of, that might even be more bottom funnel that I didn't know of. Let's see what you can do. And treating it a little bit like, in some ways I mentioned, smart shopping. I've seen others do that with things like DSA as well. Maybe layering on remarketing, or even trying DSA with TROAS and really trying to limit some things with negatives and all that. And trying to think through different aspects of the account in terms of, here are the really locked down things that we target, these specific keywords, that is more controlled. And then also, here is is giving Google's automation the chance to go out and find us stuff that we never would have found when we're just mining a couple of search term reports in that.
Correct.
And overall, I've been surprised overall by the results, and it has us leaning into trying to rethink some of that stuff more than we did a year ago.
Yeah, and I think that makes total sense, because you said, I mean, like, hey, should we focus on upper funnel and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, like, the goal is to probably increase revenue, increase profits, and upper funnel is one way to get that. But like, why do we have to control that, right? If Google can explore it. I mean, does upper funnel work within the bounds of the ROAS targets and the profitability targets that we've set? And so I think the key point that you made in the article too, or in your tweet response to Google's changes, if you're going to run broad match keywords with manual bidding and manual ad text, well, that's when the problems arise, because now you're bidding the same price for a junky search term that comes off of that broad match as for a good one. But if you let smart bidding figure it out, it knows that that's probably not as good of a query. And if it doesn't know right away, I mean, it'll figure it out in 2 or 3 clicks, right? And then the price starts going down, and eventually it's still giving you the results within the bounds of ROAS, whatever you said it should stay with it.
And it really is dependent on, it is almost 2021 with Google's machine and not 2019, 2018, 2017, right? Like what we see Google being able to figure out in our audiences, the keywords that we're trying to find, what they're able to figure out is better now than it used to be.
Right. And here's a scary one about them being able to figure stuff out. So I heard that in smart shopping campaigns, which are by default sort of conversion driven, you no longer have to have a conversion pixel installed to be able to start them. So it used to be you had to have a minimum number of conversions. Now they're like, we don't even care if you have conversion tracking, right? So what does that mean? That means that the machine learning system is basically able to look at your products and figure out similarities to other advertisers in the whole ads ecosystem, and basically knows at what rate that's going to convert and can still do smart shopping for you, right? So that's to the point that you're making. It's not 2017 anymore. Like technology since 2017, I mean, Moore's law has doubled computing power 2 times. So that's a 4x better than what we had 4 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, Fred, I'm glad that you started this talking. Is about 10 minutes in. You mentioned talking about keywords and the system, and you called it a system. And I'm glad that you call it a system, because I think we're all discussing the same thing. And again, I'm going to get back on my keyword boat because I want friends on here. But search is less about words now, and it's more about inputs. So what that means is we're feeding all this information to the system. Where you live is an input. How old you are is an input. How many children you have is an input. All this information is what feeds the Google system. Then it takes all these things together and maps, how much do I want this click? So when we're stuck on, again, something like really precise words, or like, we must set our manual bids, it's kind of like buying a Roomba and then shoving it around your living room. Like, it's, I get it. And like, don't get me wrong, the system has its flaws, but as long as you give it guardrails where you're okay with it being wrong and let it do what it's great at, Kirk, as you were just saying, if you feed it information and feed it information that tells it what's important to you, and you let it do what it's good at, it usually works.
Yeah. And I think we're totally on board with that. It's at the same time, it's depending on how much time it needs to get it right. I think that's where us seeing the search queries will help guide it towards that right. And I know when this whole search query thing was announced, Kirk and I had a discussion. Aaron, I actually think you might have been in on that one too. Saying like, I didn't think it was a big deal as much. And then you realize how much was taken away. And then one of my coworkers, Tim Jensen, was sharing his search query reports, and literally Google is targeting the exact opposite of what the product is. Not like chocolate milk chocolate. It was a close variant, the complete opposite of what the product was. And it's like, that's dangerous. If we can't see it, and then that's what they're optimizing towards, I think that's what people are afraid of, and now rightfully so.
Mm-hmm. And if I sounded too pro Google, now I can sound anti Google in a sense. So I can contradict myself here a little bit, which I think sometimes is healthy. And that is, so hopefully Googlers are listening and hearing like, yeah, they're pro automation. We are, but then we're also, as Aaron and Joe as all three of you are saying, we're pro automation, but we're pro human guided automation. And so there still is absolutely a place for us not just throwing a broad match term with T-row as bidding and just being happy with that, because there are other elements of things that we can pull out. And then to me, a really, really crucial aspect of this is there's still a marketing aspect to this that goes beyond just system defined inputs that they can bid according to. And I do think that's an important step that is still a little bit difficult, maybe even still impossible to automate at this point, which is part of managing a PPC account, which is why it is more complex than just throwing a few broad match things in there with T-ROAS, because now there are other things we're trying to do with that. Losing 90% in some of these accounts of search terms, we use those search terms for other things than just putting, than just excluding or not excluding. There were other ways we use those in our marketing efforts. That's gone now. And so I think there's kind of both sides of that.
Yeah, so, and I think you said it perfectly, but one thing that we could all ask Google for is, we understand that there's privacy concerns and you had to remove search terms, but what about thinking about n-grams, right? Unigrams, bigrams, like pairs of words that frequently appear throughout that, where we don't necessarily can connect it to one user, but give us that data because we still want to use it for other things that we want to have some insight, right? So I think there's a happy medium that could be achieved, and right now they just had to completely pull it away from us. But I'm hoping that they sort of figure out a way to bring the insight portion back, even if not like the individual user. What did they search for?
They just want to pull it, so then they'll have another cool feature for the opportunities.
I mean, it's not that different from not provided for the SEO folks. However many moons ago that was. I'm not sure how many of you follow me on Twitter, but do any of you four use Google Opinion Rewards, the little survey things? No. For those of you who haven't used it, it's effectively an app on your phone, and it used to historically primarily target you when you went to a hotel or something, and it would be like, hey, did you actually go to this hotel? Talking about store visits. But of late, I started getting a bunch that are asking me if effectively if a broad match would be correct. So obviously it was Cyber Monday this week, so I was searching for a bunch of coupons because I'm not cheap, but I want to get a good deal. And so in turn, I've been getting a whole bunch of stuff where it's like, hey, does this word sound good for you? And they're like, Iceland coupons. And I'm like, what? Like, am I buying a discount country? I don't understand. But so it seems like they're trying to learn it a little bit more and get more human input to figure out if it works. Which makes me think that they're making a lot of tweaks to the algorithm, trying to make it better so that the things like search terms going away in a year, which might happen, frankly. I wouldn't be surprised if it did. But they're trying to make that better and more tolerable. I mean, at least what we're doing is that what we're doing for a good number of our clients is that we're throwing everything in the keyword tool on broad match and getting all the keyword suggestions. And then it'll, okay, like now we know what the algorithm is going to match it to. Here's our negative list. But
that's a good strategy. So you use the keyword tool to figure out what search terms might come out. Nice. Mm-hmm. Any third-party tools that you love? Not asking for Optmyzr because we don't really do keyword suggestions that much, but how else do you find search terms now that Google doesn't give them to you?
For us, using, again, it's a little bit of a return to old, but in a new way. It's using things like Search Suggest. It's looking at the sort of similar suggestions or tools like Answer the Public or Subel. Again, just figuring out, just like Google's trying to steer its own ship, it's kind of steering people's minds too. So like whatever shows up in Suggest, like that's where the volume's going to go. So doing that with different VPNs to represent different locations and figure out neighborhoods and stuff like that. That stuff that we used religiously in like 2011 and then went away from, we're now going back to it, but in a little bit of a different way.
Hey, let's all hold this up and talk about this.
Mine's over there.
Aaron,
go get it.
Yes, I want a bobblehead. That's awesome.
Right. Anyone who wants to send Kirk a bobblehead, ping him later for his address.
Yeah.
All right. So, Kirk, congratulations. You got your book out. I know it's a big effort. It's got good reviews on Amazon. So tell us a bit about the process and what are some of the key takeaways that you put in there?
Yes, definitely. I always think of Seinfeld. If we have any Seinfeld fans listening, what is it a show about? It's a show about nothing. And I feel like that's my PPC book. What is a PPC book about? It's kind of about nothing but everything. It's a very random set of. I use the word philosophical, maybe a little bit loosely, but it's a set of philosophical kind of ponderings of stuff related to PPC. So stuff like attribution, stuff like automation and data, and are there any data rights that advertisers have? If so, what could they be? Things like that. We talk about agency stuff, marks of bad clients to avoid that you can see beforehand on your calls with prospects, PPC pricing for agencies, things like that. So just kind of had this itch to sit down and just, a lot of the kind of individual things that I just have thought about over the years. I wanted to write on those, get them compiled into a book, and push that out. So.
What I like about it is that you're not necessarily like going at it with the goal of like, hey, I'm going to tell you exactly what the answer is, but it's more like what's been the thought process over the many years of running an agency and considering the pros and cons of everything. And so then sharing with people where you landed at this point, but also the thought process that went into getting there. So I thought that was really valuable. And
there's one part. No, I'll kick in. I jumped around a little bit reading sections. I'm saving the agency stuff to the end because I don't own an agency. But the part I liked about it was kind of towards the end. There's a little personal part about the end, and kind of Kirk thanking people for you process through writing is what you said. And it's kind of like reading this book is kind of like being in another town hall like this. And I think that's been the most enjoyable part like this. It seems like it's an open discussion. All thoughts are welcome. And you do say that multiple times too. But it's at the moment, you're just hearing one perspective, but still having an open mind to everything. So it really kind of feels like an open discussion while reading the book.
That's cool. I appreciate that. It's intimidating to get your thoughts out there, whether, people who like blogging or whatever, because especially when you have certain opinions on things, you might be wrong. And it's that is intimidating. And so, but at some point, that conversation, I think, is what helps us, because there might be a level where I might look back on this and think, oh, hey, some of the thoughts that I said in this town hall 2 years ago, wow, I was off, right? But in some ways, it's that conversation that's getting us all thinking, that's moving us along. And so in some ways, that's what the book is. It's just kind of a conversation that is not intended to lead you to my place, but intended to get you to think about it. So then maybe you get to a better place I do. Then you can tweet me, tell me about it, and then I'll be smarter too. Thanks to you.
There's this quote that I found a couple of weeks ago, and it's a really, really old quote, and it's from Paul Graham, venture capital guy. And Kirk, I'm going to correct you twice. So first of all, and this is funny because I'm doing what I'm correcting you on. Opinions cannot be wrong. Opinions can be disagreed with. So the quote is, paraphrasing, of course, because memory is not that good. But when an expert is wrong, they're not usually wrong. They're simply applying their expertise to an earlier version of the world. And I think I find that a lot and part of what I enjoyed about the book is it's sort of a stream of consciousness combined with a memoir. It's a journey through your learning process that you shared with all of us, which is fun to see, and not enough people are willing to share that. So it was enjoyable to read. It was enjoyable to, for lack of a better word, again, watch you learn and share everything that you adopted with the rest of the world.
Cool. I feel like we should all have this big hug.
We're not supposed to right now. Like, let's elbow bump.
Not even on screen.
Nope.
Nice. So lots of people weighing in here who've read the book already. So people really love it. So thanks for putting that out there. And just in general, I mean, one thing I love about this industry is that we do share and we learn together. And this session today is really about, like, we have all these old best practices, but Google keeps changing things on us. So we got to figure it out again. We don't have the answers, right? But it's only by sharing. what we've seen and new techniques that we can all get there together, because we're all trying to basically achieve the same thing. And what's nice too is that given all this automation, I think a lot of our competitors are basically going to fall off and just be like, hey, fine, I'll use smart bidding and I'm going to let it do what it does. But then for us, we can still have that little bit of an edge by actually figuring out how to not necessarily game the system, but, you know, take it to its limits.
Yeah, what we've seen from my employees, my team, and frankly across the industry, the people who are most successful are the ones who understand the change and don't try to hold on to best practices. They have a good read of when something is a big deal, when they do need to change, when they need to completely change, when they just need a different tone. And I think that's the value in these sorts of town halls and talking with all of you, is it's less about what's broken and it's more of what do we got to upgrade a little bit.
Yeah.
I'll say one thing on that too, though. And so I've heard people, I've written a few posts that say things like, hey, Google, here are some reasons I think you should reconsider some of this automation or think through, right? Or in some ways almost concerning of what is Google trying to accomplish, right? So sometimes I'll hear pushback, kind of like why even care? Why even write that stuff? Just jump on board with it and move on with Google, right? I know that's not exactly what you're saying, Aaron, because you and I have talked before. But I also think there is needed and helpful industry pushback while we evolve, because there are certain things I still maintain and believe that a fully closed private system, like a smart shopping system, is actually ultimately dangerous overall. It's too closed off. It's too easy for someone at Google someday, if they're not, to game it for their own purposes, even if not nefarious. And so I think that, and that's again why these conversations are so good. But I think there is a healthy, and I would encourage people to still engage in healthy and positive debate and pushback to Google. And I would encourage, if there's any Googlers listening, I would encourage Googlers. I almost feel lately that, like, I'll see them talking and at times, you know, inviting maybe someone who agrees with them in terms of fully on board with automation, things like that, inviting them to talk, things like that. There doesn't maybe seem to be as much of a willingness, at least that I've observed, I could be wrong, to say, hey, this person disagrees. Let's really understand what's going on with search terms. There almost seems to be more of this canyon being created of between advertisers and engineers, where almost this like, well, of course, advertisers are going to hate it. They hate change. And advertisers, well, of course, Google's going to do that because they hate us, right? And I think there's helpful things on both sides, and like the conversation needs to happen. And I am a little concerned that maybe that's not happening. So while we evolve, let's have that conversation and also keep Google honest.
That content is valuable, because if you're young and you're very new to this industry, you will run into that boss. You will run into that client who sees that one article or that one thing from Google and says, how come we're not doing this? You need to be able to have some sort of leeway, if it makes sense, to push back, but then have the knowledge in your head to back up why you're pushing it back. So that stuff needs to be out there. One, just for educational purposes, that you don't have to do this all the time. You don't have to just cancel all your ETAs and implement RSAs right away. You don't have to do this stuff right away until they pull the carpet out, if they do. You know, it's one of those things where just educate yourself and be aware of all the options and figure out what's best for you, because two similar accounts can approach things totally differently.
Yeah, exactly. When you see these posts that RSAs work better than ETAs, I mean, that's for one account, right? And by the way, I don't know if you guys are doing sessions at SMX this year, but that's coming up here in like next week, I think it is. So I'm doing like one of these other big battles, me versus Brad Geddes, RSA versus ETA. I'm going to lean on the RSAs a bit. He's going to lean on the ETAs, but we have some really interesting data. And so totally makes sense, right? You got to look account by account. And even if in general one thing tends to work better, like it still depends on every advertiser. And it also really largely depends on your implementation of that specific feature. Are you guys speaking at SMX?
No.
No? So sorry.
None of us.
Thanks, 2020.
Yeah. No. We're not blaming 2020. We're going to make fun of Fred for making us all feel bad.
If only it was easier to search the website.
No, Kirk, to your point before, first of all, that was a great impression of Joe whining about Google. But second of all, it's an interesting point. And I think it's one of those challenges. I'm not going to take the Google side of it, but it's one of those operational challenges where it's product versus engineers versus sales. And effectively, I mean, no beating around the bush. A lot of our Google reps are sales. They're sales. They're not supporting people anymore. That's okay. I don't think Google will deny it. But that's one of the challenges that all of us face, particularly as agency owners. We can get fired. Google kind of can't, which raises a really big challenge. But we've actually, most of my team knows this, but it hasn't formally been rolled out. We're putting the phrase best practices in a swear jar. You're not allowed to say it anymore.
Beautiful.
You have to say recommendations, because if you say best practices, like this is a Google best practice, yeah, a Google average recommended thing. We recommend doing something different. Yeah. So it's all about framing, and it's all about looking at motivations and goals and incentives, and figuring out how you can get the most out of the system for our clients, which is never easy, but that's why we have jobs.
And I'll put my Google evangelist hat on again for a second to bring in the counterpoint here. But I think what you're saying, Kirk, is really important about the education that we have to do. And Aaron, about, it's recommendations, it's not best practices, but there's so many people who work at Google, and many of them are much younger than we are, and they've been in PPC for far less time, yet they are the ones tasked with fixing like this tiny little portion of something that's part of a much bigger thing for us. And so they don't necessarily have the context. I mean, and I remember, and I think you guys had the same experience, but at Google Marketing Live 2 years ago, we go and talk to one of the product managers on Google Shopping, and we're like, hey, we don't love the fact that you're hiding how much of my results come from remarketing and YouTube versus like straight up new customers. And like the reaction was, oh, wait, you guys care about that? I'm like, well, duh, yeah, we do care about that. Like,
I remember.
Do you think are they not doing enough like user inquiries and panels and that? Or because I know they do some on that sort of thing, but
it's so limited, right? And I think that's why because I know they read search engine land, I know they look at these videos. So the more that we talk about it, and the more that if we're just complaining, like, then we're like, oh, well, there's that whiner again, right? But if we complain and we explain why and how we would have used that data and what we're missing, now they can at least start to frame maybe a solution to it, right? They might not be able to bring back what we used to have, but at least they'll understand why. And I kind of equate it to like, and Aaron, I don't know, maybe you see this a lot, but if somebody on your team who's a bit more junior goes in and sets like a target ROAS or a target CPA, like, can most of them even tell you how to calculate a CPC with conversion rate? Right. I mean, so some fundamental things that we used to do on spreadsheets before we had TCPA bidding, right? The average PPC marketer nowadays probably can't do that anymore. So if you're going to them and saying, hey, how do you make the most of this automation? Well, if they don't know what that automation is based on, like what's below under the hood, then how are they going to fix it, right? And I think that's part of our job too, is just putting it out there and making sure that people remember how things work and why we got here, and how it could still be pushed further and be better.
Well, my team doesn't have that problem because they know everything. But no, I mean, I'm going to date myself a little bit. Raise your little hand here if you've seen Hackers and love it and can quote it. What is wrong with all of you? Amazing. But you should go see it. But there's the old adage of hack the planet. And the idea is that the planet is the system, and that you have all these things and you can take advantage of the system. So we're taking more of a hack the planet approach to our trading system. Again, it's less about keywords. It's less about this. It's less about CPCs, bidding, and it's more about what is in the system and how can you take best advantage of it to be a good advertiser. And since we're a more holistic, do everything agency, it's also a lot of where does PPC fit. So we've historically kind of been typecast to the bottom of the funnel, like we need conversions, we need sales right now. There's a lot more stuff we can do. So trying to figure out how to deploy the system in these different elements of a marketing maze trying to pivot our training a little bit more that way versus here's why you segment match types. It's a challenge.
Talk about that in the book.
Well, now my book.
Now Aaron needs to write a book.
We all know I'm way too lazy to do that.
Training PPC teams. That would be a solid Aaron book.
Honestly, if I could frame it in one quick sentence, we're doing our best to institutionalize curiosity. Like asking why 6 times. Like, oh, smart bidding works. Great. Why did it work? Okay. Why did it look at conversion rate correctly? Mm-hmm. Okay. Why did it index really high on guys with mohawks that have purple sound damping and live in a Milwaukee basement for some reason?
Because the algorithm is spot on. That's why.
Trying to understand those things, like, I wonder what's going on here. And then instead of looking at we deployed smart bidding on our campaigns, it's more of, okay, how do we optimize within the system to make sure the system is doing everything it best can? Which is really hard to train, and we're working on it.
All right. I don't think we could wrap this up any better than this. It's about curiosity, ask why, and ask how to make it better. All right. Corey says this has been a panel of legends. Corey, thank you. Corey, we'll have you back as well. You're one of our favorite speakers too. So thanks everyone for watching. We want to continue this conversation. So in 2 weeks from now, we're going to continue. Joe's actually going to be back. He was going to be on the next one, but he's like, he really wants to be on today as well.
I was supposed to be on today just to be like in the background. I was going to just be heckling this guys, but then I guess invited to the whole thing. So
you could be the sound effects guy next time.
All right, so thanks for watching. Check out Kirk's book. It's on Amazon. Great book. Check out the Tinuiti blog for some great data on Black Friday, and reach out if you want to talk to Aaron's team. And then check out Joel's channel, the videos. So great. And then we'll see you back in 2 weeks. So thanks, guys. It was great having you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
See ya.